Welcome everybody. Today we are talking about markers, which are a fundamental piece of dog training. What are markers, you may ask? A marker is a word or sound that predicts to a dog that a reward is coming. So we've got two choices in this. We can pick a word that we can use, or we can use a clicker. Clicker is often used in classical conditioning, Pavlovian's theory of classical conditioning. Look it up if you're not familiar with it. I'll spare you the time of listening to me talk about it. However, in short, the idea of using a marker is that it predicts that a reward is coming to the dog. So I click, I pay the dog. I say yes, I pay the dog. What I want the dog to understand is that a reward is coming because they did something. But before I can do that, before we get ahead of ourselves, I need to teach the dog that that word or sound predicts that a reward is coming. So how I do that is I often will take the dog's daily food. So if we're having breakfast or dinner, I'm going to take a whole bunch of that food, throw it in my training pouch, and just have the dog with me. And if they check in with me, if they look at me, I click and I give a piece of food. I might click and throw a piece of food. But I want them to know that that sound is predicting that a reward is coming, or again, a word. But for today's sake, I'm going to use the clicker so you can hear it. But fundamentally, that is really where we have to start with all dogs. They have to understand when they're right, and they also need to know when they're wrong. So part of this process is communicating with the dog right from wrong. Okay, so now let's say the dog understands the clicker. How do we know when they understand what the clicker or the marker is? Well, you're out with your dog and you click and they turn around and look at you. Right? They go, "What do you got for me? I must have done something right." That's when you know. So you've got your dog out with you, you're walking around, you've done click pay for, let's say 4 or 5, maybe 6 meals. They should know that when they hear that word or sound, I should be looking at you. Now we can move forward in training. We can start using that in our everyday activities and training with the dog. So we have the dog out, we ask the dog to sit. The dog sits, we click and we pay. And we rinse and we repeat. The goal of all of this is that this acts as a bridge between the behavior and the reward. What's also important in this process is that when I click, I don't click and pay at the exact same time. I want to click and then pay. So your marker should also be your cue to then reach for your reward and give it to the dog. If I click and pay at the same time, it does not have the same effect. It will not work. You will always have to use your marker for everything that you do in training. So that's super important for you to think about as you're going forward. That's why recording ourselves is pretty important and pretty valuable, so you can catch yourself if you're doing it. Because oftentimes you're going to think to yourself, "Nah, I did it right." And you go back and you watch the video and you were doing it completely wrong. Believe me, I know from experience. Okay? So that's the first thing you need to do, is teach your dog what this marker means. Click, pay. Common words for verbal markers are yes and good. Negative markers could be no, right? No, you're doing it wrong. Try again. So you want to make sure your dog understands those things, and then you can move forward in training. So as you move forward in training, the next steps then are, again, as I said, using this tool or your voice marker in the training sessions, okay? So if your dog is not doing something well enough, then you need to practice teaching the dog that thing first. So let's say, again, a sit is a very common example. If my dog doesn't know how to sit, I've got a green dog out here who's never sat before. I'm going to spend time luring the dog into that position, which we'll go over later in another training segment. Because I'm going to lure that dog into the position using the food. When their bottom hits the ground, I'm going to click and pay. I am not going to say sit until they are performing the behavior. And again, we'll cover this later, but that's an important thing for you to keep in mind, is we don't want to say the command until they're performing the behavior. Okay, so I will have my dogs out here in just a couple of minutes, and I will demonstrate a verbal marker versus a clicker, because both my dogs actually are on, Doug is on verbal, Riggs is on clicker, he's transitioning to verbal. I always want to go to verbal when I can, because my voice is always with me, okay? So as I bring them out here, we'll show you how all that stuff looks, but we'll use place as an example. So I've got Doug out here. Doug is on verbal markers. So I'm going to let him get off the board here. Doug, come. And I'm going to send him over here. So I've got two choices here. Doug, sit. I've got good, which means I like that you're on there. Now stay there and keep it up. And most of the time when I'm saying good, I'm going to do what we call room service. I'm going to come deliver the reward to him in position because I want him to stay there. Alternatively, I can say YES, which means good job touching the board, come back to me and get a treat. So drive-through essentially. So we got room service and we got drive-through, okay? So if I say, Doug, place. Good. So he's not on all the way. He knows to be on all the way, so I can tell him, no, no. There we go. Good. Now he's on. Good. I can come deliver the reward here. Again, room service. I'm giving it to him here. Good, good, good. I can release him. Okay. Now I'm going to send him there, and I'm going to mark with yes. So what should happen is he should hit the board and come running back to me, okay? Here we go. Doug, place. Yes. Good. Doug, place. Yes. So my goal in this is for him just to get on there and get off. Also, if I'm doing this at a great distance, the word allows me to tell him he did the right thing, yes, and that he can predict that the reward is coming. So he knows why he's being rewarded. If I'm doing this from 50 yards away and I yell yes, he knows exactly why he's getting rewarded by the time he gets to me, because yes is predicting that reward. Doug, place. No. Good. Good. Yes. So yes is what we call a terminal marker, which means the behavior is done. You're finished up. Come take the reward from me. Good, I call a duration marker, right? Keep it up. I like it. Keep going. Keep doing it. Way to go. So in training and in practice, what most people struggle with, and you're going to hear me say this a lot because I see it a lot, is over communication. He steps off the board. No, Doug, stop. Get back up there. Grabbing the leash, cranking and yanking. All of those things, it's too much. If you have the leash on, if you're teaching the dog this behavior, great. Put the leash on, show him exactly how to get there. When he gets there, you mark it and reward him. But over communication is the killer of clear communication to your dog, okay? Yes, good. Okay, so that's verbal markers. We're gonna get Riggs out here, who is now 6 months old, and we're gonna show how we use the clicker in his training. All right, we're out here with Riggs. He's on a clicker marker system. So when he hears that click, it means you did the right thing, come get a treat from me, okay? Now, for him, if I don't want him to get up, I just don't click. And I will come say good and give him some room for service here. So I tell him, good job, I like it, keep it up. If I want him off, I can click and do that. Now, some people, many people, quite frankly, use a double click as a release and a single click to mean good and keep it up. So for him, he's really good at this down, so the click, unless I move, is not going to encourage him to get up. But you get to pick and choose those things. So you can have a single click as your terminal marker, which is, as a reminder, a release to the reward. You could make the double click your continuation marker, keep it up. You could invert that. Double click means stay there, I'm bringing it to you, whatever you want to do. Same thing with a word. Pick a word, stick with it. The key to that is sticking with it and being consistent with it. So as a recap, the first thing you need to do is teach your dog what their marker is. Teach them that the marker is predicting a reward. It means I like what you're doing. I'm going to give you a piece of food for it. And when you do that, you're going to click or mark, then the piece of food. Good. And you're going to do that until you can say that word or click that clicker and your dog pops up and goes, what do you got for me? Then you can start to use it in training, and then your dog will start to have a very clear understanding of what it is that's expected of them and how to get you to produce a reward. So we talk about active dog, reactive handler. When I bring him out here, the first thing he does is get on the board if it's on the ground. Why? Because he knows that's gotten him paid in the past. So when I do other training with him, I take the board away and put it away because he knows that that's a gold spot for him, right? So he knows that he can force me to give him a reward because he offers a behavior that I like. So again, as we move forward in training, we'll talk more and more about how we use that in our favor. But again, foundationally, we have to have a marker system in place. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Yes, good boy.